off now. So we've got a fantastic panel lined up for you, and it should take around about an hour for our panel questions, and then we've got a bit of a Q&A after. So you can pop any of your questions in the chat, or you can save them for a bit later. And that's it. Let me just share my screen and we'll get cracking. Cool. So let's start by introducing our panel. We've got Grace Wilson from Komoot. Our really community is much more than a job title for Grace, who's Komoot's senior hiking community manager. You'll find Grace all over the UK and beyond, cajoling hikers and nature lovers to get outside, and as well as tirelessly campaigning for greater access rights for all. We've got Rich, who you've probably met before if you've been involved with Trash Free Trails. Lucky you, programs manager here at Trash Free Trails. Rich is a keen mountain biker and hiker, and his fascination with getting outside, with riding outside and being immersed in nature is what led him to study a master's in psychology, of the psychology of mental health. Elise Downing describes herself as runner, hiker, writer, speaker, and above average cake eater, which A, I think is challenge accepted, and B, very humble. Lily set herself the challenge of running a lap of the UK back in 2015, covering no less than 5,000 miles. Arriving back where she started 10 months later, the countless stories from the trail would go on to feed into her award-winning book, Coasting. We'll hear more about Elise's more recent purposeful adventure shortly, this time based a little closer to home in the Lake District. And we've also got Vedangi Kulkarni, a multidisciplined endurance adventurer who's as happy on two wheels bike packing as she is racing the mega avalanche. Congrats, by the way, V, that looks amazing, as she is hauling a sled across Svalbard on skis. While Vedangi has spent most of her adult life here in the UK, based between the New Forest and the Scottish Highlands, her purposeful adventure this summer really questioned the concept of what home is or was, including a trip back to the Himalayan mountains. So let's start our panel by asking each of you, and maybe Rich, you could start us off. What does purposeful adventure mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Katherine. This is interesting because it was one of the first questions I asked myself and our community as one of the first sort of mini projects I did as an employee of Trash Free Trails. So I was the second employee at Trash Free Trails after Dom, and I actually asked this question for one of our volunteers a couple of years ago. So it's really interesting to see how the concept and the project and our why and our meaning has kind of evolved since then. Anyway, to answer the question, for me, I am a bit of an outlier in this world in that I haven't always done this. I didn't grow up loving the outdoors. I didn't grow up enjoying the outdoors. I grew up doing other things entirely. I used to work in event management, and essentially that led me down a path that wasn't good for my overall well-being. I was doing a lot of drugs and drinking a lot, and I was having a great time, don't get me wrong, but what I now know was probably quite a bad period of mental health struggle for me. So I went on it's a tired cliche really, but a journey of self-discovery, let's say. And it just so happened that mountain biking was the vehicle for that. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that was a light switch, like, oh, I bought a mountain bike, everything's fine. But it took a while. But again, I don't even want to put a time frame on it, to be honest, because it was very much a journey. But I rediscovered nature, I rediscovered the outdoors, rediscovered the people around me, and it rediscovered myself as a result of all of those things as well. So to me, that's what the purpose in my adventures is reconnection, rediscovery, and kind of reconnection really. And that is very much at the root of what purposeful adventure means to Trash Free Trails as well. So I'll borrow Dom's spiel a little bit here, but if you were going to distill the problems we're trying to tackle down to one word, it would be disconnection. So whether that's from other people, places or ourselves, like I was just talking about, we think that the solution has to be reconnection. That's an oversimplification, obviously, but if you just happen to use the act of littering, whatever you want to call that, as a metaphor for everything, if you're able to drop litter, then if you're that way inclined that it's okay to drop litter, then you must be disconnected to yourself because you're part of nature, and to take action to make it worse would be disconnected. If you must be disconnected to that place because you're actively taking the decision to make it worse, and then by extension you must be disconnected to the other people that use that place because you're actually making a decision to make it worse for them. And through Purposeful Adventure, we're hoping that we can demonstrate by leaving a positive trace, you can reconnect with those people, the places, and yourself. And hopefully I get to talk more about that in a bit. So yeah, that's kind of my story and Touch Retail's story as well.
Fab, thanks, Rich. V, would you like to take it away next? What does Purposeful Adventure mean to you?
Yeah, sure. To me, Purposeful Adventure means connectedness, moving with intention. And I always think about this. So two of my favorite things to do are being outside and being on the go, on the move. And when you attach more intention to that, I think that's what Purposeful Adventure means to me. And the reason I say the whole connectedness thing is because that was sort of my theme to my Purposeful Adventures this summer. And with the whole talking about where's home and using adventure as the way to explore the concept of home, I think what that's helped me do is just feel more connected to everything. And I've done so in the past few years, I guess, I think the last 2-3 years, I've been taking some groups for introductory, bike packing and wild camping, or just, how to be comfortable in the outdoors, adventures. And sometimes I realize that I'm outside and I'm just like, okay, do I really know what I'm meant to, am I doing the right thing? Am I telling people the right thing? And I realized that came from not knowing whether I called this place home. So if I was, say, back in India and doing some sort of adventure, I think I would say with more conviction, anything that I was, any knowledge that I was imparting, I would have more conviction in sort of that. And so I realized that I wanted to know more I wanted to feel more connected to my surroundings. And I think that's what sort of Purposeful Adventures mean to me.
Great, thank you. How about you, Elise?
Yeah, I think, and I'll obviously talk a bit more detail about the adventure I went on recently, but I guess I think it just means sort of enjoying things in a way that means we can carry on and other people can carry on enjoying them in exactly the same way. And I think almost harnessing that probably quite selfish passion for the outdoors of I want to carry on using this can be a really good motivation, because I think sometimes you sit home on the sofa and all the environment just feels really far away, and it's hard to feel motivated about climate crisis and stuff, but you're outdoors and you're no, I really want this to carry on existing. And I think Purposeful Adventure is just sort of taking that into account when you're going on adventures and not doing something that means that that's not going to be there in 5 or 10 or 20 years or however long.
Cool, thank you. Grace, would you like to wrap it up for us? What does a Purposeful Adventure mean to you?
Yeah, to me it's about doing something that has a positive impact either on people or the planet. So I'm really community focused, hence being a community manager. So I've got a community group, so I love getting people outside to help with mental health, and also for people to feel like they're part of something. So to me that is a really good purpose, so it has an impact on people. And another thing would be I'm enjoying doing slow ways. So they're trying to create a network of paths connecting the whole of the UK. So they want asking people to go out and walk in a different route to check that it's accessible. So to me, it's makes me feel like I'm doing something good and actually helping other people after me.
That's really cool. I had my own little Purposeful Adventure last night, which was very unexpected, in that we had the court ruling on the Dartmoor case. yesterday, which I thought wasn't going to be until October. And I live right on the edge of Dartmoor and use it a lot, and grew up camping on the moor. And so it's something very close to my heart. And we found out, as you well may know, that the appeal was granted. So we now have the right to wild camp on Dartmoor again. So we took our bikes and we rode up onto Haytor, which is our closest tor, and had a celebration with lots of other people that have been campaigning really, really hard for that to happen. And that just, it was, I think I realized after that was like the perfect purposeful adventure for me, because it doesn't have to be something massive to be something that's like really close to your own heart. And I think in terms of rights access, like absolute landmark evening as well. So yeah, cool. That was my one. Interject there. So Elise, would you like to talk us through your recent purposeful adventure, running the least visited Wainwrights?
Yeah, so I think, it was originally called running 8 of the 10 least visited Wainwrights, but that was a bit of a mouthful, so we cut the title down a bit. I couldn't do all 10 that were at the bottom of the list because the other 2 were too far away, basically. But I think the whole idea behind when I was asked to kind of think about purposeful adventure, I think it kind of struck me that a lot of the issues we often face in terms of things like litter and having like a negative impact on these places that we love are caused by everybody congregating in these one places, like everybody going to a particular spot. And obviously you always see the kind of pictures of queues on Snowdon and stuff like that. And these places, obviously, they just can't a lot of times sustain that volume of visitors, like don't have the road infrastructure, like it makes it really difficult for people who live in local villages, like, and then obviously any issues that kind of do happen with people going outside, like litter and things like that, then are just exasperated by the fact it's all happening in one place. And I read briefly, I don't know how current this is, but Cumbria Tourism had this strategy that was called attract and disperse. So like get people into the Lake District, into kind of the key sort of honeypot areas, but then showing them all the other places they can go once they're there and how they can spread out a bit. So I thought, I'd love to basically do something based around spreading out a bit and not just going to those key places, because I think you often, like, and I've definitely done it, you just lose lazily, especially when you go to a new place, Google top walks in the Lake District, top hike here, and then we all do it, and then everyone goes to that place, and then like they're all there, whereas actually probably like the things that are 3rd, 4th, 5th, or in this case 214th down the list are just as nice and have got just as good views. I was like, the thing I was struggled with a bit when I was coming up with this idea is obviously when you're telling people to go off the beaten path and like beaten track and like promoting people go to quieter places, you don't want to be like, well, go to quieter places, so now everyone just come to this other place. So I wanted to have a bit of a sort of framework behind it when promoting it, so it could be like, well, I did this, but don't just go and do exactly what I did, look at your own like bottom of the list adventure, rather than it just being now everybody go to these bottom 8 Wainwrights and they'll be really busy instead of Scarfell Pike. So basically I found some data, I think it was I can't remember where it's from now, but basically they're tracked on their website the visitor numbers of all the Wainwrights, so it's probably not the most accurate data in the world, but it provided a good like framework. And essentially I used Komoot and literally just plotted in I put all 10 in at first, realized 2 of them were going to make it just an insanely long walk, but worked out that 8 of them were actually all in quite a close sort of little loop, well, not quite a loop, but from near Keswick. So that I planned it so it would be over 2 days. We stopped at YHA Ennerdale in the middle, and then you can get the bus really easily to the start and the finish. Did involve a nice 6 a.m. bus ride through the lakes with a lot of questionable driving from the bus driver. I just don't know how they squeeze through those places. But I think it's really important to me that if you're saying you're going to have this positive impact, not to then go and like clog up the roads and drive somewhere. So I really wanted to get the bus to the start. So that's kind of how the whole premise of it came about, really. So then went that heat wave, if any of us can remember that, because it feels long gone, at the beginning of June, basically spent 2 days running this route, and it was just great. Like the first day basically had all 8 of those bottom 10 Wainwrights on, so it was really quiet, hardly saw anyone. And then the second day we were kind of getting back towards Keswick, and we got through kind of busier places again, but it just put you in the right place at the right time, even to enjoy some of those busier places at a quieter time, like 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning. And it just made me think that, like, when sort of as individuals, like personally, I feel really lucky to live near the Lake District. I've got a really flexible work schedule. Like, I can go, if I want to go to a busier place, go on a quieter day, and then it sort of frees it up a bit for other people who can only go on a Saturday. So it was kind of nice to be in that, like, right place, right time for some of the more frequented hills, as well as exploring the quieter ones. But yeah, some of them were just beautiful, and I was like, this view is much nicer than the view from the top of Scarfell Pike. So yeah, I think that's a bit of an overview, basically.
Cool. Here's one of the photos from that trip. It looks like, yeah, from living in the south of England, it's quite difficult to comprehend being around such huge mountains like that.
Yeah, I do, because I sort of, when I was sort of talking about it, I wanted to say, like, I'd love, like, people to go out and, like, look at, like, places in their local area and, like, look at the bottom of the list there. But then I felt like I was a bit of a hypocrite when I have the Lake District on my doorstep. So obviously people can still come and visit, but
No, I think it's a really interesting message, and you know, I'm sure a lot, I don't want to use the word guilty, but a lot of us have done similar things where you are, you know, you're time poor, or you want to just go to something that's like the most easily accessible, and you end up sort of surrounded by lots of other people doing the same thing, which isn't always a bad thing. But did you find that you experienced the hills and the running in a different way, being more remote in that sense?
yeah, definitely. I think it was really nice, I guess, just the whole process of planning an event, although it sounds a bit cheesy. Like, I think it made me think a bit more about where we were, rather than just going and, like, ticking, like, bagging peaks and ticking stuff off because you're like, right, I'm in this place, I'm doing this walk. So it was nice to kind of, I guess, think about it a bit more mindfully. But yeah, there was just, like, it was such a hot time. It was the summer. I know it was midweek, but still other places have been so busy, and we hardly saw a single person. It just made me think, even if it's kind of for selfish motivation rather than purely altruistically, like, it was such a nice way to explore these places, rather than, yeah, I think probably none of us go outside to spend our time, like, sitting in traffic, looking for parking, queuing for a peak. So it's like, this is so much nicer than doing those things.
Absolutely. And I have to ask, knowing that you've recently, well, maybe a little while now, moved to the Lake District, and as a runner and a very keen sort of outdoorsy person, are you having the best time in the lakes?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, it makes me feel a bit hypocritical now and ever, because I'm writing a book at the moment. It's like a guidebook that's it's like, well, 20 different areas, 100 different running and hiking routes, and they're all accessible car free. You can get to them public transport, which is, I guess, ties in really well with this conversation. But I've got, like, quite a big bit at the beginning of being like, these are ideas, but the best car free adventures are the ones that you literally do from your front door, like, in your local area, that don't involve sitting on trains for hours and hours. But I feel like I can't really say that anymore now that my doorstep's so nice. But yeah, like, it is just, I think, and it does make it feels like it makes it easier to be able to just, yeah, go and do things sort of like early in the morning on a quiet day, and yeah, it's just amazing to have it all there. Although I've definitely become more of a fair weather runner since I've been there, because now I just plan my life around the weather, whereas before I'd be like, right, I'm going for a week, I'm out rain or shine. Now rain comes, I'm like, no way, I'm staying inside today. So not the effect I thought it'd have, to be honest.
I think, yeah, when you have lived maybe somewhere else and then moved towards, certainly to the west, or anywhere near like a national park with any sort of elevation, you soon learn that, like, when the weather comes in, it really comes in.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, thank you very much. If you have any questions for Elise, then we'll have those near the end. I think Vedangi might have just dropped off, so I'm just going to skip ahead and we'll come back to her when she joins back in.
I am here.
Oh, sorry, for some reason
Sorry,
did
I
can't
go
see
off
you
the
on my...
screen?
Yeah,
Maybe because I
Zoom's doing
muted
something
myself.
strange. Never mind.
It might be because I muted myself. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. V, can you talk us through your purposeful adventure this summer and where that's taken you?
So, okay, mine is a bit complicated because it wasn't in one place and it wasn't as sort of neatly put together as Elise's was. So through the whole concept that I went with was that I wanted to discover the concept of home through a series of adventures. And I decided to do this when I was actually in India, and at the time I was training for this record attempt to cycle from the foothills of the Indian Himalayas to like the heart of the Indian Himalayas. High altitude, very fun, but needed a lot of training. So I was based at like 11,500 feet for like a month, and I was training there for a bit, and some of my rides are sort of from there, and some of my rides are from the last few months when I've been in the UK, and I'm now based in Scotland. I used to be down in Bournemouth, and now I'm like near Inverness. In Inverness, why did I say around? I'm not around Inverness, I'm in Inverness. Quite often I'm asked, where's home? Because obviously I don't particularly look or sound like I'm from here. And so there was this time when I was asked this, and I just found it so overwhelming because I couldn't really put a finger on where I'm from. Like, I was just like, I don't know. Like, I was born in India, I was brought up in India, but then I turned 18, 5 days later, I moved to the UK, but then 5 years in Bournemouth, then moved to Scotland. And I always sort of find that question quite overwhelming. So when I was thinking about this collection, I thought about all the adventures that have made me feel the connection that I associate with as home. And because so sort of in summary, to me now, like having ridden in the Himalayas and having run Peak Divide, and with like a pure intention of, I have found running miserable all my life. I need to learn how to like running, and it wasn't like I don't have that, I didn't have literally no other intention other than I want to like this activity. I find it immensely hard, and I just don't really like myself when I'm doing it. So how can I learn to like it? And that was the intention when I showed up at Peak Divide. And just by having that, I felt more connected to what was around me, because I wasn't thinking about, I'm going to be the last person to finish it, which is exactly what happened on day one of it. But it was sort of like, I just felt good. I was in pain, but I was looking around and I was like, wow, like I'm actually doing this. This is happening. This is not, I'm no longer feeling anxious about, I have to show up to do Peak Divide and I haven't trained enough for it. It was more like, I'm here, I'm doing it. And every step that I take, I'm getting closer to actually having done it. And that connectedness reminded me of other times when I felt like that. So that connectedness that I felt running across Peak District made me feel similar to what I felt as a 17-year-old cycling across the Indian Himalayas, which was my first ever big cycling adventure. And I didn't know whether I could get to the top of the first mountain pass. It's like a 51-kilometer climb. It took me 2 days to do that at the time. And so that connectedness is what I associate with home now. So it's rather than just with the place and the people, it's the experience and relating that experience to other adventures. So aside from the training rides in the Indian Himalayas and Peak Divide, there were also some actually local rides, and I don't know if I actually ended up adding like the Mega Avalanche one, but I found it quite interesting. So before Mega Avalanche, me and my partner, we went to explore some of the local trails, which were slightly harder than what I'd done before, I guess. And I remember, like, I didn't think much of it at the time. I was like, this is just hard. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll just have to walk down this or something, or I will have to adapt the way I ride to be able to, I don't know, absorb the the impact or something. But then again, the connectedness showed when I was doing Mega Avalanche or doing the qualification race, especially when it was like super rocky and really steep. And suddenly I was relating to something I'd done before in the UK, to that feeling that I had when I was like, if I did that, I can do this. And that feeling of connectedness made me feel closer to where I was. And that I can also associate with home. So it doesn't have to be a place. It's, you know, a series of experiences that you can connect to each other. And you can, I don't know, have a cup of chai in the middle of your hill reps and remember how it felt, you know, when you had a cup of chai with your parents at a hill station in India, you know. So yeah, that was my purposeful adventure. And, you know, I'm going to continue that, I guess, throughout summer. That was a very long-winded way of describing it. I'm so sorry.
It's great. It's great. Do you think that feeling that you have with the connectedness and the feeling, the sense of home, is that what keeps you coming back for more and more adventures? Is that part of it?
That is a huge part of it, but also it is knowing what more there is, because then there comes a point where you want to see more and more because you want to feel at home more. So then it becomes a familiar feeling, you know, the feeling of being scared and still doing it, or the feeling of being at a new place and, you know, being on a multi-day bikepacking ride and looking after yourself and, you know, really taking in those views and the emojis, I guess, and the whole experience. And then you want to do more of it. And then you start feeling home more, I guess. And I think that's why I think I want to experience more of this, and then I guess the world can be my home. Yay.
Lovely. And just for those of us who aren't familiar with the Peak Divide, because I know that was a new event for this year, so would you say you weren't like regularly running, or running certainly wasn't a passion of yours before you went? And then tell us about this event. It's the one in the middle of the screen there. How far was it?
Basically, you run from like Manchester to Sheffield, and there's someone in the audience, Cami, who ran it with me actually. I needed a friend like her to sign up for this with me. So just so I showed up at the start line, because then it was a commitment, you know. Then it wasn't just me saying, right, I've paid for this and I'm going to show up for the event. It was like then a commitment. So basically, day one is from Manchester to Edale. About well, marathon distance basically, and then it's sort of about 26 kilometers, and we had a feed stop, and that was the longest I'd ever run. So I was so stoked. And I think after we crossed like the half marathon distance, it started getting slightly rough, and then it also started climbing, and I was like, oh god, okay, is this it? Like, am I gonna have to just go, Steph, thanks for the feed stop, but I'm done with the run, I just want to go home? But somehow got to the feed stop, and I don't know, like after the cheesy pasta, I was just so excited. And I remember thinking, it's just 10 miles now, it's just around the corner. Like, I've done the majority of distance, now it's just around the corner, and you know, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do this. I don't know where this confidence came from. It took me a ridiculously long time, but that was like day one, like Manchester to Edale, and then day two was from Edale to Sheffield. And it was quite funny. 10 kilometers before finish, we had like, I don't know, like there was a bottle of martini and everyone was having a shot before kind of doing the 10 kilometers down to where we finished. And oh, that was amazing. But just to give some context, I hadn't trained a lot for this. And by a lot, I mean, I had a cycle event coming up. So I was still training for my Himalayan record attempt. So I was so focused on the cycling that I was going for runs here and there, but they weren't serious, and I wasn't actually trying hard towards this at all. And this event was 1st and 2nd of April. The run that I did, the last run that I did before this event was like 27th of February or something. So the whole of March had gone by and I hadn't managed to get a single run in. And the first run I do was, my first ever marathon. I do not recommend doing it this way because there are other ways of feeling connected. For example, I could have trained, I could have felt good at the start line, and then I could have actually not been in as much pain. On day 2, I was enjoying, like, I was having a good time with the people around me and with running, and I was starting to have a little bit of a better relationship with that activity. But then I only realized how much pain I was in when we ended up at this bog section for like, it was like a boggy section for like 1.5 kilometers or something. So not much, but I enjoyed that more than I did the bit before, mostly because it felt like I went from like a hardtail to a full sus bike. Like all that, shock absorption really felt nice. And I suddenly realized that, oh God, okay, this is going to be hard on my body. But now, like at this point, only had like 12 kilometers left. So, can't complain about 12 kilometers. So just had to get it done at that point. But yeah, it was incredible. And I don't say it in a light way, but if I can do this, genuinely anyone can do this, because ask, like Cammie's here, literally ask Cammie, she knows how much I struggled. And I was like there at the finish line and I was just like, oh, I could do this again. Like when I think about it, I only remember good things about running along that ridge line and seeing the big views and yeah, happy memories. And that's why, like, again, you asked earlier, is this why, I keep coming back to stuff like this? Exactly. That is why I will go back to it.
Yes. Well, I think it's incredibly courageous to sign up for something of that magnitude, not having done a huge amount of training for it. So very impressive stuff. There's also
Katherine, you've known me for a while. I jump into the deep end.
Yes. Another glorious photo there. Whereabouts was that one, V?
So this one is like from Kardungla. So Kardungla is at like 5,500 meters, I want to say. So really bloody high. And this was on my training ride, which went from Leh to Kardungla. So it's like a 40-kilometer climb. You go over 2,000 meters up. But I know the stats don't sound very impressive, but with the altitude, it just, feels quite hard on your body. But my goal for this ride was to have as less stop time as I could. So every time I stopped, even to drink water or something, I put a minute timer on my watch. And I was like, before that minute's over, I have to keep going again. And that was ridiculously hard. I thought, I was like, I do this, like, I'm a long distance cyclist. I do this all the time. I can go for 4 hours and then stop. And, and I had a lot of overconfidence. And you can't have that when you're in these mountains. You really, really can't. No matter how much I trained for it, this was going to be hard. And I have climbed Kardungla, which also used to be like the highest motorable pass in the world at one point. I think now it's the second highest, but yeah, like you feel it, you don't think about it when you're cycling up it, and you go halfway up and there is like a place where you can have a cup of tea. And the hardest thing of this ride was to not stop there to have a cup of chai, because honestly, I looked at all these shops and all these army people and I was like, Novi, we have a goal here. If we have to do a much longer version of this and not die, I have to make to the top of this and stop as less as I can. But yeah, that was this ride. And on the downhill, I had no such goal, which meant that even though I didn't take a single photo at the top, on the way down, just like 200 meters from the top, a couple of guys on a motorcycle stopped me and said, oh, like, what were you doing? And the classic thing everyone asked me in the Himalayas when I was training was akeli ho, which means, are you alone? Are you by yourself? And people ask this with concern, but when they ask me, that's more concerning, if that makes sense, because they're going out of their way, they're stopping themselves and me in some treacherous black ice, just, you know, just to sort of make conversation. But anyway, they said like, oh, we saw that you just came to the top, no one took your photo and you just went down, like we would like to take a photo. So I was like, actually, yeah, I would too. And it'll probably be, yeah, good for my Instagram too. Probably I should take more photos. Yeah, I realized that I had just not thought about anything other than I shouldn't be stopping. So it was nice that I stopped, looked at the view, had these people take a photo, and then had a very treacherous ride down. And I must say, climbing for 5 hours is easier than climbing down for 2 hours, because yeah, that downhill, my God, my hands, they were messed up. Like I couldn't open the door after I got into there, and I was just like, I can't, my fingers aren't working. It's just too long of a downhill. My hands are gone. So yeah,
cool.
that was that ride.
Funny what you say about the photos, and we do laugh, you know, oh, I've got to get something for the Instagram, but I think having photos to remember, or video or whatever, maybe taking a sketch at the side of the trail, having something to remember your adventures by, like that, I think is really key. Cool, thank you
Absolutely.
so
And I
much.
wouldn't get a chance to tell this story if it wasn't for that photo.
There you go. Cool, so over to Grace and Rich. That's just a couple of really amazing purposeful adventures that have come out from Vedangi and Elise there, but we've got a huge number that have already been contributed to the campaign already, and hopefully lots more to come. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to ask you, Rich and Grace, to highlight maybe a couple of others that you've come across in the collection that you particularly wanted to highlight. Perhaps Grace, you could go first.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm lucky that I get to work with some amazing people doing some great projects, so it's quite hard to choose. And if you check out the collection, you can see loads of different ideas and inspiration. But two that sort of really stick out. One is sort of similar to Elise's, that's highlighting like over tourism, and it's actually in North Wales. So it's Carla from Summit Seekers. She wants to do 3 amazing mountains in Eryri National Park that aren't Snowdon. And so again, it's the whole thing to highlight there's too many cars, like locals are getting really annoyed with all the crazy parking, lots of litter, and just so busy and so many people. But if you've been to North Wales, you know there's like so many other amazing places. But like you said, Elise, often people just Google or research, look on Komoot, like a mountain in North Wales, and just go to where everyone else has been. So that's why it's like super important to look at different options and different mountains and stuff. So yeah, that's a really cool one. And the other one is Iona, who lives in Scotland. So she runs Iona's Adventures, and she organises hiking meetups to get people together. And so she's a nurse, and she really cares about people's mental health and community, and getting people together in the outdoors. And so she did a hike at the weekend, and she always organises group walks to get people together. So that's just a really nice community focused purpose as well. But yeah, there's so many different options as well in the collection and different inspiration.
Nice, thank you. And whilst I've got you, Grace, could you explain why Trash Free Trails Purposeful Adventures campaign is important to Komoot, and what the business wants people to get out of it?
Yes, so at Komoot, we really care about people and the planet, as I do as well. So we're committed to nature conservation and promoting sustainable adventures as well. And Trash Free Trails are our major partner this year. So we really love their values and love the message that they share as well. So we really wanted to particularly get behind this campaign and really get involved and get people like Elise and Vedangi and our ambassadors and the community to get behind it as well, to inspire other people to go on their own purposeful adventures. We do lots with national parks. We're also working on a nature series project with Trash Free Trails and the National Trust, and that is to reconnect people with nature. So it's just, again, showing our commitment and our values and how much we sort of care. And if you know Komoot and you use it, you know that it's not about how far and how fast. It's all about just getting outside for the joy and for the fun of it, having fun and adventures with friends. So again, this message just really sort of reinforces Komoot and our values, and also how we think this can particularly help you using Komoot is that you can search for routes from public transport, and you can look for highlights in less popular areas. So you can also create your own highlights. We sometimes call them hidden gems. So you can look in areas that are sort of less touristy. You can find routes from like local cafes if you want to promote local businesses, and also from the Trash Free Trails community hubs as well. If you want to sort of promote like little bike shops and things like that, or a co-working space, it's also like a nice purpose. Yeah, so again, if you use Komoot, you know, it's a super friendly community. So the idea is you plan your own adventure, or you discover an adventure on Komoot, you go off and you share photos and you write a description and write what your adventure was and the meaning behind it. And then someone in the community sees that, they get inspired, and it's just spreading positive vibes and yeah, encouraging more people to have a nice purposeful adventure as well.
Wicked. It seems like such a natural fit, so it's just a no-brainer really. Nice. How about you, Rich? Have you seen any purposeful adventures already from the campaign that have or maybe one of your own?
Yeah, loads. And also some stuff that I know is going to happen that I'm really looking forward to as well. So and this is a kind of theme that it's quite hard to draw out of this kind of conversation, because we're all, you know, of a certain ilk. You know, Vedangi's surrounded by, I don't know, 20 bikes. Is that what you've got there? And you know, I'm in an expensive gym, and we've got North Face clothing on and that kind of stuff. And I think that it's very easy for people like us to say, oh, this is great, go and have a great time in the outdoors. But actually, it's not that simple for many people. I'm not going to speak for everybody on the call there, of course, but there are people out there that might be inspired by all of this, but they're not able to for whatever reason that might be. So what I'm really looking forward to is some of the much smaller scale stuff that we've seen come around in the past. So there's one of our ambassadors, Jo Shui. I don't think she's on the call just now, but she's one of the you know, powerhouses of our A team that's worked extensively with groups of young people from disadvantaged areas that she has a direct relationship with. And it you know, it can be a 30-minute bike ride, you know, and that's all it takes for these guys. And sometimes they pick up rubbish, sometimes they don't. And that's another thing I wanted to pick up on as well. Like, it's not, you know, it's a great way to foster reconnection. And obviously we will never tell people to not pick up single-use pollution, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that because it's hard enough work for you to get out the door, then that's totally cool. You know, like, you have to, if you want to get involved, then there shouldn't be any barriers to that, whatever they look like. Again, it's great for us, and I promise it will be great for you if you are able to remove some single-use pollution, of course. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot of those kind of smaller scale ones. I know that there's some coming up with people like Joe in our community, and I think Lauren, who is on the call, has been doing a couple of projects with a group called Manor House out of Kendal, that is like a young offenders kind of rehabilitation centre of sorts for young people 18 to like 28 or something like that. So that kind of thing, and that's been a bit more structured. We're working with them it's a project called the Multiply Project, whereby essentially if it's got maths in it, like our State of Our Trails report does, and it can be anything from percentages, then they're really keen to get involved with that. So how that works is Lauren's been taking them out on a short walk around a local area, picking up some single-use pollution, bringing it back and sorting it out. And you're teaching these people really basic mathematical skills like how to figure out what percentage this is of this, and then making it into a pie chart. But also you're fostering that sense of connection, responsibility and ownership and belonging that these kind of people, and the kind of people that I was talking about with Joe, don't have. So yeah, there are a couple of like examples of the stuff that I'm really looking forward to seeing. And really the reason I'm looking forward to seeing that is because we don't ever see any of that on other channels, you know. And like, how often on Komoot do you see a 1 kilometer route that's been done by 2 kids that don't have a family out in the middle of Wakefield? You know, that just doesn't happen. For, you know, like, why would you? But I'm really looking forward to seeing some of that, again, for 2 reasons. Because it's good for those people that are doing it to see it, and it's also good for people to be like, oh, well, actually, I don't have to do 200 miles. I can just do what these guys have done, and that was great. And I've not only have I done it, but I've made a positive contribution to, you know, myself and the other people I've shared that experience with. So yeah, there's a couple of, and then the other one that I'm really excited about that I will be going on myself is some of my oldest friends from Cambridgeshire run a vintage clothing shop. They are quite the characters, let's say. And they just don't, they're city boys, you know. They don't go to the outdoors. They have a vintage clothes shop in the middle of a city, you know, and they have quite strong connections to the local like mental health and rehab centre called Centre 33 in Cambridge, that a lot of people we know and a couple of people in their like immediate circle have benefited from the like help of. So they last year they did Scarfell Pipe, just the 3 of them did a trail clean, and we tried to like link it up with a few different stakeholders as well, so that because the people that they are and the people that they have in their circle are the kind of people that you'll see on Snowdon in the shorts and the flip-flops and the, you know, oh, look at them in the shorts and flip-flops, they shouldn't be here kind of thing. But they've got just as much right to be here as you do, and they're only wearing the wrong clothes because either they can't afford it or they don't know that they're wearing the wrong clothes. So we're hoping that with it's called Heat Hut, and it's a shop out of Ely near here, and they're gonna, you know, not wear the wrong clothes, but they're gonna wear the wrong clothes, if you know what I mean. They're going to have, you know, boots and proper shoes and stuff, but really flamboyant jackets and silly hats and stuff. And they're going to go do a trail clean on Snowdon. We're going to try and pick a sort of not as busy day, but the idea is to show, you know, our community, the outdoor community, that everybody's welcome. It doesn't matter what you are, what you look like, and what you like wear, as long as you know how to act. So we're hopefully going to work with or get at least do a little, like, make contact with the like Snowdon Rangers. So we can, even if it's just 10 minutes, and they can talk to these guys about why the paths are maintained and why we ask people to stick to the footpaths and why you shouldn't put dog poo in the bushes and that kind of stuff, because that's the stuff that people don't know. And, you know, a lot of the time on the like littering, you know, conversation action, that's not a conscious act. You know, it's very, very rare, I would say, that someone grabs something and thinks, oh, you know, 2 fingers up to Rich and Trash Free Trails, I'll put this on the floor, you know, that or 2 fingers up to the environment. That's not what happens. It's totally mindless. And it's because they don't know what's going on. And we hope that because people like my pals at the Heat Hut, people like those smaller adventures that I was talking about, if they get it, then they are better advocates than we are to talk to those people, because that's what we need to be doing. Not like, oh, look at him wearing the wrong clothes, he shouldn't be here. I'll go and do my adventure in my £500 worth of kit and run back down to the bottom. I'm going to talk to this guy. So that's the stuff that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Not to take anything away from the kind of epics that we see as well, because it's incredible to see. But I think they serve quite a different purpose, actually. So yeah.
That sounds incredible. I especially like the sound of the flamboyant jackets. I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing all about those.
Yeah, so my mate Dom has a thing for them, and he actually ended up getting a few different ones made. So there's a company called, you know, it's a big fashion brand, so I'm not going to pretend they're sustainable or ethical in any sort of way, but Montclair, you know, that's really expensive kit, and it's got like flowers, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's so like ostentatious. But you know, the other thing with it's really cool to like have them on board is they have like a fast fashion, anti-fast fashion thing. So if you want to wear this designer stuff, you can get it from us for half the price. Yes, it's still 300 quid for a jacket, but it's not 800 quid, and it's not just bought and then chucked away. We've done something with it, and they've got everything from like, you know, jackets, hats, t-shirts, and it's not all that kind of price either. They have affordable, you know, old Reeboks and old Nike Dunks and all of that kind of stuff. So it's they make that quite accessible as well. And something that we are going to make happen this time that we weren't able to make happen last time is that they're going to bring like a bag of clothes and find a local the kind of kids that Joe works with that would appreciate that kind of stuff and donate it as part of the adventure. So like really building up those layers. You know, if we can make anything that I've just said happen, fantastic. If we can make all of it happen, then we're on to an absolute winner. So yeah.
Awesome. You reminded me a minute ago as well when you were talking about Joe's work of the film, which I think we saw last year at the State of Our Trails Summit, featuring Joe Shui and the work that she's done with some of the schools. If you perhaps, Rich, if you'd be happy to find a link for that one and share it, because if you haven't seen this already, it's just absolutely amazing. And if you make it to the end without crying, then I don't know how you've managed it. It's just super touching, and I'd really recommend giving it a watch in your own time. So Rich, just another question from me. If people want to get involved, they're feeling really inspired and want to do a purposeful adventure of their own and have that logged within the campaign from Trash Free Trails, how do they do that? Do they need to sign up? What's the process?
Yeah, so I mean, bit of a loaded question, Catherine, obviously, if this is a Komoot times Trash Free Trails panel. So the best
we've been wearing green.
Yeah, the best way to kind of properly embed yourself into the work is to download Komoot and use it to either plan or record or both your adventure. And we've put a couple of videos out on our channel that show, you know, make it really easy to do that. It is really easy to do that anyway. If you then tag us into it, then we'll add you into that collection. So not only will it be recorded as a purposeful adventure, but you also might, who knows who you might inspire, you know, and like I was saying, doesn't matter if it's like 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, 10 kilometers, 500 kilometers, that will inspire someone that might not have been inspired otherwise. So it isn't just you doing this, we're doing this together, we're doing it ourselves. That's what we like to say. And it's not just what we like to say, it's a very important value of ours as it goes. Chloe's linked the Trash Mob film in the chat there, and we'll send it out in an email as well, along with a couple of other bits. Otherwise, like the other thing is that a lot of people don't like to use route planning platforms for whatever reason. Like we have a huge like challenge in trying to record a lot of the way people interact with our work. We have the State of Our Trails report that records all of the citizen science data from that we're trying to find. That's a research project with Vedangi University, but at the same time, lots of people don't use that and they just use Instagram. So the best way to do everything is do the Komoot thing, put a picture on Instagram and tag and share as well. And there's another option, get in touch over email. Hi Rich, I saw you on the panel the other night and I just cannot get my head around Komoot, but I've done this thing. We'll then get in touch with you to figure out how, help you to use Komoot basically and put it onto our collection. So yeah, 3 layers. First one's Komoot, second one's Instagram, third one's an email.
Thank you very much. So, over to you. Do you have any questions for our wonderful panel? If you pop them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and hopefully we should be able to hear any questions.
I had something to a couple of things to just like add and like say, but they're not really questions for anyone, but it might spark questions. I love this, like, you know, semi awkward bit of the bit thing where people are like, someone must have a question, but hopefully we can stoke a bit of something. So I think just to pick up on Elise's adventure and this idea of it feeling quite selfish, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you know. Like I think it's okay to like do things for yourself, you know, and if that's what you want to do, then do it, but just consider what the impact that you're having is. Like very rarely do we go to a place and do something for ourselves and think about what we're doing there, you know. So that would be a way to add purpose to something that you might conceive otherwise as a selfish act. Like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it for myself? What, you know, how have I got here? How easy might it be for someone else to get there? And you can do all of this stuff after the fact. Like, you can go and, you know, totally beat yourself up on a 100k run or whatever it is you runners do, and then think about all of that stuff afterwards. And I think it's okay, you know, to go on these things for a selfish reason, as long as you've like considered why that is, and as long as selfish doesn't include like disrespecting anybody or disrespecting the environment or disrespecting yourself. And
that's a really good point, Rich, and it made me think about I had a similar attitude actually, Elise, last year, and I was just feeling a little bit down in the dumps about things in general, and in the like the climate crisis. And at the State of Our Trail Summit, there was a really fantastic piece about nature connection, and essentially, as Rich sort of explained at the beginning, you know, the fact that the problems that we have are due to this lack of connectedness. And what's the quote, Rich, that's on your emails and that you said is one of my absolute faves?
oh, what, David Attenborough's one?
Yeah, I love it.
Testing me now. No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they haven't experienced. So, you know, you can't get everybody to care about stuff that they haven't seen.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful, because, you know, a lot of what we do as adventurers, as writers, as storytellers, is about helping people to see these things, to experience them, so that they can feel inspired and go out and do it for themselves, to foster that nature connection, which then, you know, helps to grow this care for the environment. So yeah, that was something that was really powerful and stayed with me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's all about like using almost those slightly, I guess, selfish motivations, and like as a using that as a motivation for then the doing good piece, because I think it's really hard to care about something that you just don't interact with or experience, isn't it? Whereas I think I personally find like going outside and adventure and stuff like that, especially when it comes to kind of the environmental stuff, it makes it just feel so much more real. Like you notice like the weather changes and a heat wave and litter, and in just the way that you just don't sitting at home, like you like logically know their issues, but it's really hard to almost believe them. And I think that connection definitely is like really important. So I think, yeah, definitely fine to start with just, I like doing this and I want these places to exist, and out of that can come some really good stuff.
Yeah, and you used a couple of keywords in there. I don't know if you know you did, but noticing is a really key element of nature connection. Like just being there and noticing the environment is a huge thing that you can do to improve your connection to nature and yourself, whether it's you're noticing positive stuff or noticing negative impacts. That can all be of huge benefit, and that's something that you can do that might feel selfish, but as a result, that connection trust me, it ends up being contagious. If you go home and tell someone about this amazing selfish experience that you had, that isn't going to go unnoticed with anybody that you share that story with. So yeah, I mean, just on quickly, I know Grace has got a question for Elise and Beast, but just give me 1 second. About like other people, like sharing the place with other people. This is a difficult one, because I couldn't agree more that it's very difficult to like do all of the stuff that we're talking about when it's really, really busy. But there's a reason it's really, really busy, and that's because everybody there feels exactly the same way about that place as you do. So again, I take this with a huge pinch of salt, but just try and remember, like, and I know like everybody's the same, so I know what I'm saying here, but a lot of those people are feeling exactly the same way as you do about this place. So just try and put that to one side a little bit when you are surrounded by people on the top of Snowdon or whatever. Like, we think it's like, oh, look at all those people waiting for the selfies, but that's a huge experience for them, you know. That's a huge mountain that they've had to climb. Let them have it, you know, like that's totally cool. It's look the other way. You know, that's what I always think. Like, there's that big queue of people at the top. It's just like, okay, I'm just going to look that way, and there's nobody here, and then I can go back down, and that's all good. So yeah, sorry, the question that Grace had for Elise and V was, since doing your Purposeful Adventure, do you think more about the purpose behind your daily adventures? So yeah, that's cool actually. Do those bigger trips contribute to your little trips?
Elise, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think definitely something I think about quite a lot in terms of, I guess, being somebody like publicly shares adventures is what you share in terms of like specific, like if I've been to like a really cool place, like you want to tell people about it, and I hate that kind of gatekeepery attitude to places. I think it's important to, I think it's amazing that all this information's like available, and like you're saying, Rich, that you can't complain about people not knowing how to, I guess, be in the outdoors acceptably if we're not sharing how to do that and where these places are, and they're not places for us to keep. But then balancing that with, like, I think there's a big part of exploration is like finding your own spots and not just going somewhere you've seen on Instagram. So I think something I think about a lot is what to share, what not to share. And I think the balance I was trying to strike more, I mean, is to like try and share more about how I like find a place and plan an adventure, and not to sound too much like an ad, but I think that's why things like Komoot are really useful, so you can show behind the scenes a bit rather than just here's a cool place for sure. And I think also something I think about a lot is like what you can do like specifically as like your own individual. So it might be that like as coming from a place of like massive privilege in terms of like knowledge, access, and like free time, probably like income, etc. Like I probably feel like I can sometimes take myself somewhere on a quieter day or whatever, like we were saying earlier, and then rather than just complaining about everyone going to one place on a busy place, if the Saturday is the only time someone can go and they want to do Snowdon as a big challenge, like you're saying, Rich, then I think let those people, and you can almost take yourself out of the equation sometimes, and maybe that's what you can do as an individual. So, and I think, yeah, you definitely can't complain about anywhere being busy if you're the person there making it busy. Yeah. Like that is my worst.
you're actually there as well, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't.
So I think like if you're, I just think, well, if I want to go somewhere quiet, I need to go somewhere quiet rather than hope that these other people don't turn up, basically.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because lots of people like, that is a thing, isn't it? People complain about the people that complain about places being busy are the people that know full well that they can go and do the glitters or something, or whatever else it is. Or like, oh, Ben Nevis is a shit mountain. What do you mean?
I think it's like really important to remember that, rather than being that horrible attitude like, well, this is the outdoors is for us and not for you, so we should be able to go. Like, no, just go find somewhere else to go if you don't want to see the other people.
Yeah.
And exactly. Just to interject there as well, like some of the most wonderful, heartwarming moments I've had when I'm out walking or hiking has been the people that you meet in these places. And it's not necessarily like at a honeypot location. It could just be, you know, passing another couple on the trail and having a bit of a chat and hearing about their day and their experience. And that's just really delightful. I think that's all part of it. But
one of the best moments actually I feel like I didn't really go into that much detail about what actually happened on my 2-day Purposeful Adventure, but we basically that first day was really quiet, and then the second day the route back to Keswick took us over Cat Bells, which is definitely not one of the least climbed way routes, like really always really busy there. And it was actually really nice. Like there was a group there with like, they were obviously on like a birthday hike, they're wearing party hats, and it was actually really nice to go from that like contrast of like that isolation. That is something that personally I love, that feeling of like having the mountains to yourself, and I'm happy to go somewhere a bit more inconvenient if it means having a bit of that. I really enjoy that feeling. But then going back into just all these people enjoying the same stuff that we do, and I thought, and it was actually really nice to be back there. It's just, I guess, how we then lessen the damaging effects of that. But yeah, it was actually great. They were having such a nice time, and I was like, this is what the outdoors should be. It doesn't have to be serious. It can be wearing a party hat
or a fancy jacket.
Yeah.
How about you, V? How do you feel that your Purposeful Adventure sort of winds its way into your everyday life, if at all?
I think that's through just sort of being meaningful about everything that I'm doing. But the biggest way that I think it'll make its way into my daily life. And I don't know if I can call this daily, but you know, earlier I was saying about taking like South Asian families for bikepacking adventures and introducing them to sort of how to be comfortable in the outdoors. They haven't necessarily been bikepacking, I should probably say that first. They've also been like just general outdoor experiences. But I think the bigger adventures will definitely and have definitely helped me sort of bring the passion from that and pass that onto people that probably currently say, like, you know, a lot of rain is bad weather rather than just slightly rough weather, which is a bit inconvenient sometimes. So I think, you know, changing that kind of, I think a part of changing that attitude is showing that you can also be comfortable in, you know, in rain and when there's just a lot of midges. I don't know if there's any way to make that sound fun. I don't know. Midges are just not fun. But I think I'm definitely learning how to make literally anything outdoorsy seem more comfortable, more fun, and help people that I take out from these adventures push their comfort zones a little bit through that, because there comes a point where, like, even I sort of understand that it's a huge deal for them to spend a night in the tent, and it's a huge deal for them to touch mud and not go, ew, this is disgusting, and sort of go, this is good, this is normal, this is how it's meant to be, almost. And sort of passing on that passion, like just getting better at that. I think that's a big way of bringing more meaning to the purposeful adventures into more of my day-to-day stuff.
Nice, thank you. Now we've got another question.
Okay. Sorry, Katherine.
Yes.
I was just gonna do what you were gonna do. So go for it.
Got a question from Jenny. He loves hiking as a way of connecting with nature, but wants to do more multi-day hikes, and usually does them with friends. Jenny has some time off coming up, and wants to do some wild camping on their own, but nervous of doing so and wild camping on their own. Any advice? What advice would you give? Grace, is this one for you?
I would probably say V's more experienced in this.
Yeah. Quick deferral to V.
I think, yeah, wild camping on your own for the first time, it's always slightly challenging because it's not actually, like, I think it's fighting with your mind about the fact that I'm thinking of all these dangers. Yes, they exist in real life, but because I'm thinking of them, I'm almost scaring myself slightly more. So I think about the first sort of, when you're off for your first wild camp on your own, I think having things that are comfortable and that make you feel at ease, having those things with you. For example, you know, having your hot chocolate, so having a stove and a setup to make your hot chocolate, or downloading your favorite audiobook so that when you're offline and everything, you have something to listen to, having that little bit of white noise. And at one point, just sort of listening to all those sounds that make you jump, you know, when you listen to some sounds and you're suddenly like, what the hell was that? So like coming to a place where you just sort of accept that that's just going to happen and it's nothing dangerous. If it was dangerous, it would be over before I know it, sort of thing. But it wouldn't, like, basically finding a place where you know that there is some level of comfort attached to it and making that experience for yourself, I guess. I don't know if I explained it very well, but yeah, I know for a fact that when I did my first ever wild camp, I was not comfortable and I was scared, but I slept really well because I was listening to, like, the sort of audiobook that I was listening to when I was, you know, sleeping in my own bed the night before. I continued the same audiobook, and I was really comfortable in my sleeping setup, and I was just really warm and cozy. So I didn't think about anything else. But when there were noises, I still was like, it still made me jump, and I still looked around. But because I was in a bivvy rather than a tent, there was no barrier to it. I was just like, if it's here, it's here. So that was really nice. So I would say first wild camping. I know a lot of people are like, oh, but tents are like, great for privacy and everything. But for a first experience, bivvy is like, like the best way, I would say. I that's probably like a very, very unpopular advice, and I should probably stop talking now. But Katherine knows I love my bivvy.
Yeah.
I love my bivvy setup. I love my bivvy bag, and I 100% vouch for it, especially when you're by yourself, because you're just smarter. You just make better decisions when you only have a bivvy bag. But yeah, I don't know how helpful that was. I hope
that was
at
great.
least
Thanks,
a little
Bea.
bit.
Can I just
one
add
thing? Is someone else going to speak? Or does that mean?
I was just gonna say something really quickly, but you can go if you want, Grace.
I was just going to, the thing I get most nervous about is knowing where to pitch my tent. So I think if you know someone that camps quite a lot in a certain area, just sort of asking if they've got any advice, not publicly, but like just messaging them and asking if they've got
What
like
3
favorite
words?
sport or something. Yeah, so that you know exactly where you're going to, and you can plan your route to that point rather than having to look around in the dark or something like that. You go, Lisa.
Yeah, I was just gonna say also, I feel like, especially if you're like newer to doing things on your own, it's fine to ease in gently. Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about avoiding the crowds, but I think sometimes it's really comforting to have people around, and there are trails you can pick that are really sociable, like things like the West Highland Way and stuff. You can have alone time if you want it, but you could probably spend all day every day walking with someone if you wanted to, and you'll meet people that you could pitch your tent near, and I think that's a nice middle ground. Like, you go on your own, you can spend time if you want, but you can see people. And I think also, like, again, I to be honest, I still don't love wild camping on my own. I'm so scared of serial killers in a way that I know is irrational, because I know they're not waiting for me up a mountain. But I just think I love a campsite, and I think you can find really nice ones. Like, it doesn't have to be all like big caravan parks. You can find some lovely little campsites that kind of almost feel like camping, wild camping, but actually you've got a bit of safety of there being other people around. So I think I always think it's fine to like ease in gently and do what you're comfortable with, and like find out, because it is meant to be fun and meant to be enjoyable. But I think so sociable trails are a good start, and then you can dip in and out of the human contact.
That's a really good point. I have to admit, I've never solo wild camped, but it's a question that comes up a lot. And yeah, don't listen to true crime podcasts would be my number one. And I'm a big fan of the sort of nearly wild camping style campsite where, you've got that almost like a bit of a security net, if that's what you really want, and sometimes a compost loo, which is quite nice, but also in really stunning locations. So yeah, nice one, thank you. I've just got time for 1 or 2 more. So we've got one here. I think this is for everyone, really. Do you ever find, having done amazing and meaningful things, that you then feel unmotivated to do the smaller things, or pressure to try and make everyday adventures more meaningful? Anybody keen to take that one? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe nobody feels that way.
I was just going to say, especially sort of working at Komoot and getting to work with all these amazing adventurers and stuff, sometimes I feel like my adventures are a bit like low-key. Especially if you follow me on Komoot, it's a bit like, might be like 5k run is a big run for me. Whereas some people, that's like, oh, quick, what is it, shakedown run? And I'm a bit like, oh, that's a big thing for me. So I think it's, but then I've done like some bigger hikes and things, but I quite enjoy just like pottering about in the forest or on the coast path. But then I think it's like the smaller things, like I've got some books on like bird watching and like different trees and plants. So I'm trying to like incorporate more things like that into the adventures and stuff. So or like with saying Komoot's not about how far, how fast. So it's if you're going for a run, stopping and going for a swim, or sitting on the beach for a bit as well, and not worrying about how quick you've run a certain distance. But that's just me personally.
Yeah, I think I definitely, but I feel like really started a bit too big on the adventures front, and my own mum called me a one-hit wonder. I have no desire to ever go on a I like adventuring, but also like having a home and friends and sense of community, and like I have no desire to go on another like year-long trip. Or I keep saying I'd like to do like a few months, that well, it's been 6 years now, and I haven't even wanted to do that. So I think, but I definitely feel like almost like you talk about these big things, and then I forget that people might be interested in hearing about the smaller stuff. But then I think when I think about what I enjoy consuming when it turns to like reading about adventures, I'm much more into reading about like a day hike someone's done that I might actually go and do. Like I'm increasingly a bit less interested in reading about the huge adventures, because although I'm obviously really impressed by the people, I just think, well, I'm not going to go do that. Whereas this one day hike in Snowdonia, I'll actually make a note of and go and do it when I'm there. And so I think it's like remembering what's a bit more relatable to people. And I think everyone's probably so guilty of living in this bubble of people doing absolutely wild long adventures. And I think like kind of like Rich was saying earlier, I don't know if that's always that helpful. Like, I think it's important to promote those smaller things that are so much more accessible to people. But I think I just always have in my head that I'm such a beginner. In my head, I'm just so clear. I remember going for my first run, that in my head, I'm still such a beginner, even though I know that's not really true anymore. So I'm like, well, I'm just a beginner like everyone else. And I'm like, no, probably not that much of a beginner anymore.
We won't let you get away with that one. Cool.
But I feel like it probably is a bit patronising to people, and it's not meant to be like that. It's just like, I just so clearly remember not being able to run for 5 minutes.
Brilliant. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. I know we're a little bit over time already. Just want to say massive thank you for everyone for coming and joining us. Really hoping that you're feeling inspired to go on your own purposeful adventures. So do remember to tag Trash Free Trails on Komoot and on social, and you can use the hashtags #mypurposeful_adventure and leave a positive trace. Really looking forward to seeing loads more of those coming into the Komoot collection and seeing where everyone's been up to. Thank you so much to Rich, Elise, Vedangi and Grace for joining us. You can find them on Instagram and on Komoot, so you can have a bit more of a browse of their adventures on there. Loads of really cool ones, and a summer of purposeful adventures as well is the collection on Komoot. Alrighty, thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Katherine.
Thank
Very
you.
much. Right. Just going to leave it open in case anybody. How'd that go, Katherine? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's great.
Right. Who's going to lurk? I like seeing who lurks.
The lurkers.
We've got 8
Cool.
Got 5 extra lurkers.
Wicked. Well, I'm going to sign off because John's just been
great.
cooking a bolognese.
I've
got
got bolognese at home as well. That's what I need to get. All right, cool.
I'm going to sign off because this hound has been doing so.
Oh.
Look, that's basically like, come on, what the hell's going on here?
Love it. Right, I need to do this. I need to go.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, and hold tight the lurkers for hanging on right till the end. See you later on.
See you. Ciao.
Bye bye.